The move begins with a government official who assigns a special team of people to go to Vietnam on a secret mission. As the team lands in Vietnam, their organizer Baller takes one of them called Jance somewhere. Jance reveals that he doesn't even know why he is here in Vietnam. Meanwhile, in a rural village, a man named Mason seems to be busy fixing up some broken sheds in a house when a village girl named Keela tries to bond with him and asks him to come eat with her and the children. Baller takes Jance to the jungle nearby to the village, and after arriving, Baller immediately equips himself with a gun before entering deep inside. They come across some local drug runners, fully armed, who are patrolling the area, so they hide themselves behind the bushes. On the other hand, in another part of a jungle, a group of doctors get trapped as their vehicles suddenly break down. So they debate what they should do and end up deciding on walking to the nearest village according to the map as it gets dark. Baller finally makes Jance do what they came for and tells him to set up an antenna. This helps Jance and other team members Fielding and Kroger watch over and survey the antenna's surroundings from their home in the town. The CIA suddenly calls Kroger and reveals to him that they are the ones behind the scenes who want control over the forest, explaining why Baller made Jance set up a surveillance camera there. On the other hand, instead of going to the village, the group of doctors accidentally goes to a dangerous location where they encounter a bunch of kids with fake guns. Jance and Baller return to their base in the town and confirm to the CIA that they are done with their tasks. The CIA proceeds with their mission, which is to unleash 4 robots in the rogue Vietnamese drug runner forest. As the 4 robots safely land in the forest, the Jance team tries to control the robots remotely. But because the connection is too weak, they fail to establish proper control over the robots. This brings up the possibility for Jance that the robots might become rogue Terminators if they lose control over them, by being disconnected from the communications set up earlier. The group of doctors eventually reach the village, but unfortunately, the drug runners also follow them there. They don't get to murder the doctors, thankfully, as both Mason and Keela intervene and promise that they are good people. Some technical issues happen from Kroger's side, and that causes one of the 4 robots to get broken. The doctors spend the evening at Keela's house, where Jason tries his best to instigate Mason, only to make the plot more interesting. The next day, the children of the village, led by a kid named Leap, come across the robot that got broken and take off its module, which was establishing the connection to Jance's team. Now that there's no connection, the robot becomes self-active, and seeing it come to life, the children run. Meanwhile, the drug runners get too impatient and tell the doctor to leave the village if they don't want to die. The children come there, followed by Jance's team's robots, who begin to shoot all the drug runners at the command of the CIA. One of the kids gets hit by the brush of gunfire, and his unfortunate death causes the American doctors to be in support of the drug runners. Seeing the kid dead, her mother comes there and picks up the gun to fight back. But Jance's team ruthlessly murders her too, as the CIA doesn't have any morality in them. As people keep dying at the hands of the armed robots, Mason falls back to the place where the other children and the doctors are hiding. But the robots easily locate them and force them to run away. The CIA boss notices Mason through the robot's vision, so he halts fire to get a better understanding of why an American is staying inside of Vietnamese terrorist group's village. The Jance team locates all 6 Americans, and since murdering the terrorist drug runners was a secret experimental mission, the CIA boss decides to murder all of them as well, knowing that they are innocent. But Jance's team hesitates to shoot their own people for no reason, and that buys them enough time to escape to the forest. The CIA boss learns that Mason was an ex-military soldier, so he orders Jance's group to make sure to murder him first, as he will end up becoming their biggest threat if he gets to leave. While the cat and mouse chase is going on, the rogue robot finds the deserted village and learns everything about this world through the internet. As the robot grows its own conscience, it becomes more ruthless and slowly becomes the most dangerous thing around here. Inside the jungle, one of the doctors, Angie, suddenly slips and falls, and an armed robot slowly comes close to murder her. But because of her injuries, Angie fails to escape and gets trampled on by the robot, controlled by the CIA. Jance can't believe that they just got a doctor who came here for a noble cause murdered. But they have no options, as if they don't comply, they will die too. The other survivors hide inside a narrow cave for the night, but one of them, Bao, who was separated earlier, gets cornered and brutally murdered by a robot. On the other hand, the rogue robot tries to communicate with Jance's team, but because they don't reply, the rogue robot downloads all their files and makes them realize that the rogue robot has become too self-aware. Baller pulls out all the cables and loses their connection to the other 3 robots as well. Realizing that the rogue robot can become very dangerous, the CIA boss then makes a new order to destroy it. The next morning, Mason finds a landmine on the ground, so he uses it to distract the robot into going somewhere else. His plan works, and so he uses this opportunity to head back to the village with the other survivors. There they encounter another robot who murders the survivors one after another, slowly and painfully. Mason makes up another crazy plan to destroy the robot and blasts it with a landmine. Thanks to his desperate attempt, the robot blows up and increases their survival chance to 1%. Mason then returns to his love interest, Kayla, who reveals himself to be heavily injured. The doctors try to stop the bleeding even though they don't have any equipment. Leet grieves his father's death and blames himself for stealing the module from the robot. But Mason doesn't think that is true and takes the module from him so that, at the end of the movie, he can have a clutch moment as the main character. The rogue robot gets into a fight with the normal robot, controlled by Jance's team. However, the rogue robot shows himself to be far more advanced in fighting thanks to all the data he got from the internet, and defeats the controlled robot. The CIA boss debates whether he should destroy the rogue robot or somehow take it under control since it has turned into a groundbreaking AI soldier. Fielding can't take the pressure of murdering civilians, so she too becomes rogue and escapes from Bowler's place. She tells her associate in the USA about everything over the phone and tries to get out of the city. But in the end, Bowler chases her down at an abandoned house and murders her. Fielding's friend from the USA tries to contact the media, but before he can do that, he too gets murdered by a bounty hunter sent by Bowler. On the other side, Keela and the others pray for the ones who died and then continue their journey to escape from this forest. They climb up even mountains together to give them a better chance of leaving, but when there is only one of them left, a controlled robot spots them. Jordan distracts the robot away from the others, but he eventually reaches a dead end and meets his own dead end. But thanks to the other survivors' sudden screaming, the robot goes away, saving Jordan's life for now. He manages to regroup with the others and keep running away from the robots run by Jance's team. Speaking of Jance's team, they get threatened by Bowler even more, making them lose their mental stability. Bowler then heads to the jungle to murder the survivors and tracks them using the GPS that is installed in the module that Mason is carrying. The survivors find themselves in another cave, and it shows how confused they still are as to why they are being pursued by these armed robots. Suddenly, a blind native man runs into them in the cave. They follow the blind man, hoping that he will somehow guide them out of the jungle. Later at night, Mason tells Kayla about his sad past as a Navy soldier, but that not being relatable enough makes no one cry. Not even his love interest, Kayla. The next morning, Mason sees that Kayla has lost her consciousness as she reveals that she is bleeding internally. At the same time, one of the robots comes to their location, so while the doctors are busy treating her, Jordan and Mason engage in a fight with the robot. Thanks to Mason's plot armor, the robot gets stuck between some rocks, and Mason uses this opportunity to run away with the others. Mason finally figures out that these American military robots are pursuing them and trying to murder them because they are in the wrong place at the wrong time. What an absolute genius someone must be to be able to figure that out. Jance and Kroger realize that no matter what they do for the CIA, they aren't going to get out of here alive, as they are also witnesses. On the other hand, Kayla takes her last breath, leaving everyone in tearless tears. But they have no time to mourn as the controlled robot comes there to begin the chase once again. Now that Mason no longer has a person to protect, he decides to become the sacrifice and misleads the controlled robot to go the opposite way from other survivors, giving them time to escape. But they fail to escape as they reach a dead end, so the guy who almost died at a dead end earlier distracts the robot from him. He survives a fluke again and escapes with Mason from the robot. Mason finally realized that the module must be the reason why the robots were tracking them, so he throws the module somewhere else and keeps running from the robots. Des, who has been the biggest liability among the survivors, gets blown up by a landmine, and then Mason gets captured by the controlled robot. The rogue robot comes there just in time and takes down the controlled robot, making everyone wonder whose side it's on. The rogue robot causes the CIA boss to become more impulsive, and this time he decides to launch a direct drone attack on them. Mason gets into a debate with the robot to define what life is. But before the debate ends, the robot on the CIA's side fights the robot, giving the survivors another shot at leaving alive. As Mason is already too injured to walk, he stays behind to fight Bowler and somehow helps the rogue robot win against the only CIA robot left. The rogue robot finally understands that life is important, so it allies with the survivors and traps Bowler by self-destructing itself. Now that it has all turned into a mess, the CIA boss doesn't get clearance for the drone attack and now must face the authorities himself. Jance's team gets approval to leave unharmed by the CIA boss's boss, but the CIA boss blows them up by exploding their building anyway. Jance somehow survives the blast, including the actual survivors who finally escape the jungle. The only thing left for them to do is tell the world their story and make the world leaders realize how terrible the American military is. Thanks for watching. If you like the content, give a like and subscribe for more videos. See you next time.